We're unmuted.
All right, good evening. I will be chairing the meeting for this evening for a portion of the meeting. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if I can ask Councilmember Tremblay to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And if we can take the roll call for Camarillo, followed by Oxnard, please.
Yes, for Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long, Supervisor Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Vice Chair Tony Tremblay, Councilmember Susan Santangelo, and Public Member Scott Bear.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum for Camarillo. And for Oxnard Authority, Supervisor Kelly Long, Chair Vianney Lopez,
Here.
Councilmember Bert Perello, Vice Chair Gabe Teran,
Here.
and Public Member Barb Filkins.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum for Oxnard.
Thank you. We will move on to item number 3, the agenda review. Do we have any changes or any comments? Mr. Freitas.
Madam Chair, we do not have any changes or adjustments to the agenda.
Thank you very much. We will move on to item number 4, the approval of the minutes of the November 14th meeting. We'll start with Camarillo. If there's any changes or a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
All right, all those in favor? Does anyone oppose or any abstentions? All right, and then we will go to Oxnard. Do we have any changes, edits, or comments on the minutes of the November 14th meeting? Or a
All right.
motion?
No. Barring no comments, I will move to accept the minutes as presented.
And I will second.
Thank you. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or any abstentions? All right. So we will move on to item number 5, public comment period. And do we have any public comments or a statement that needs to be read? We do
Yes,
have
I will
one.
go ahead and proceed with this statement. For live public comment to members of the public who wish to address the commission authorities tonight with live public comments on any agenda item, please visit vcairports.org/meeting-calendar for participation instruction, streaming links, meeting IDs, and passcodes. In-person speakers present will be called upon first, followed by remote participants. Speakers will be called to speak after the agenda item is presented. For in-person public comment, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the secretary before the end of the public comment period. For our remote participants via Zoom or telephone, please accept the prompt to be promoted to speaker and unmute your mic when it is your turn to speak. Members of the public are allotted 3 minutes per item or a cumulative total of 5 minutes for multiple items at a single meeting, unless the time allotment is increased or decreased by the chair, depending on the number of speakers. Please use your time allotted accordingly. And for the record, we do have one public comment in person. Mr. Bill Thomas, and you have 3 minutes and just 1 second. Give me one moment.
And before Mr. Thomas begins his public comment, just want to, for the record, that we do have Councilmember Bert Perello who has joined us.
Thank you. I'll note that for the record.
It's my minute. That's my 3 minutes start. Okay. I'm Bill Thomas, alternate member, public member for the Camarillo part of the board. And I have 2 topics. One of them involves the board and the other, the Wings Over Camarillo. I was a alternate public member pre-2000 and then I was the public member for a long time. I thought that it was worthwhile to be able to share part of my knowledge of the airport and aviation when I signed back up to be an alternate public member. But the rules have changed since I was a member. Originally, the alternate members would sit on the board at the dais and be able to participate and contribute. But for the votes, the only people who could vote would be the primary member. During COVID and a change in airport administrations, that all changed. And now the alternate member is not allowed to participate in any of the discussions. It's primarily a figurative job with no particular input to the board or to the public. So the value of my time is marginal. I was told that the reason of the change was because county council said that that's how it should be. Both in my military Navy career and my corporate career, we always viewed county council or any council as advisors, not as the ones who set the rules. So I would ask that the board at least consider some way for the public members to be more participative than sitting in asking to put a card on for every event that they might want to speak on. It's just, I don't think you're getting the value out of me, and I don't think I'm getting the value out of the time. Second thing is on Wings Over Camarillo. Last year, we had a very successful air show, but we lucked out because we figured out how to do the parking. I think that this year and following years, the entire Wings Over Camarillo is a question mark as far as viability with the current parking situation. If we are going to be successful, I think we need to have a very proactive county, city, and Camarillo Wings Association group figure out what to do with the parking. The current status of county airport parking, they're getting a lot of money for a lot of cars that are in the parking lots that we need. Not trying to say that we shouldn't do it that way, but I think that the Department of Airports probably needs to take a look and see whether or not, if we're having to expend
Mr. Thomas, your 3 minutes is up, sir.
multiple dollars, we need to probably get some help from the county and from the airports. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Thank you. And we do have a one public comment on Zoom, and we will promote him to speak in just one moment.
Hello?
Okay, Mr. Trimborn, you have 3 minutes starting now.
Good evening, Chair and authorities members. My name is Robert Trimborn. I'm Director of Operations for the Wings Over Camarillo Air Show. And I'm kind of dovetailing on what Bill Thomas had just discussed. Our biggest challenge going forward is going to be the parking issues at the airport. With the rental of the lots to car dealerships and manufacturers, it's putting a stress on the parking situation at the air show. I've done some research on the cost of doing off-site parking, and the worst case scenario would be we'd have 4,000 people leaving the event all at the same time at the end of the event, and then moving all those folks to remote parking lots on buses that have to deal with the city traffic, getting there and back, could cost in the six-figure number easily. It's a lot different than the county fair where people come and go constantly throughout the event. Air shows, basically people trickle in at the end, it all stops, and literally half of the audience leaves at the same time. So anyway, so for the air show to be viable into the future, we have to figure out a way to remedy the parking situation that's just staring us in the face. The event this year will be August 16th and 17th. We have no guarantee for the use of the parking lots that are currently vacant now, because a big ship could come in and the lots could fill up almost immediately with new cars coming off the boat. And that would leave us basically stranded and scrambling to find parking. So That's our biggest challenge with the event. It's a very successful event. We get between 8 and 10,000 people a day. It's the largest event probably in the county besides the county fair. And we attract a wide range of people, lots of families, and they really have a great time. And I really enjoy being the director of operations. But I just want to bring it to the authorities, direction that we need to have something happen soon. We need to have a committee formed to address the parking issue. I've discussed it with airport staff. They're on board with us trying to figure out a way to fix this thing or to at least address it, because if we can't address the parking issue, then the Wings Over Camarillo, as we know it, will no longer really be able to exist, because we won't be able to park the requisite number of cars to facilitate the type of event we have right now. And with that, I want to thank you all for letting me speak tonight, and we'll be reaching out to officials in the near future to help us address this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trimborn, and I see Mr. Freitas is taking note of the comments, so just ask for follow-up and the continued engagement with our department staff.
Thank you.
Right. No other comments, just to confirm?
No, we have no other comments.
All right. With that, we will move on to item number 6 under the Oxnard Airport Authority. To begin with, this is the selection of the chair and vice chair for calendar year 2025. So at this time, if there's no comments from staff, we can just open it up for nomination for the chair and vice chair. And we can open to the committee. Well, with that, I would like to nominate Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Tehran to be the 2025 chair for the Oxnard Airport Authority.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question I had, but you beat me to it. Are we taking both positions at once, or are we doing them one at a time here?
We can do either. If we can do one at a time, since I've just made one motion first. And
Okay, so you made the motion?
yes.
Okay, well, I'll wait for vice chair then, and we'll see if
Okay.
there's a second.
Okay. Let me ask Mr. Freitas just for some
So it is the discretion of the committee and the authority. The typical rotation, is moving from the county as the chair to the city as the vice chair, and then the public member to move in the chain. So the normal progression would be now to the city as the chair and the public member as the vice chair is the typical rotation at this time.
That should make an excellent chair. And if I can take a little bit with the indulgence of this board member, the gentleman that spoke about being a member of the public and being involved, Mr. Thomas, when I first got involved, I know that all I knew was if I get in an airplane, I want to get out of the airplane in one piece. Mr. Thomas and Mr. Fussell before him and with him brought tremendous, and Walt Calhoun, I think was the other individual's name, tremendous asset. And I think them not being involved is an error on county council, but I've had a dispute with county council in the past and I don't always win. But I think that the member of the public would have been a good chair, but if she will go for an assistant chair, vice chair, I may put her on nomination.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I think we have two motions. I certainly agree with Councilor Perillo on that. If the board will indulge me on this, if we can take these motions one at a time. I guess as a gesture of accepting the nomination humbly, I'll second the motion. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tehran, for your willingness to serve. And I know Ms. Filkins will be an excellent chair. I know she mentioned some challenges this year personally on her schedule. that would prevent her from stepping into the chair position, but 2026 is around the corner. All right, so with that, we have the motion for Mayor Pro Tem Tehran to be the 2025 chair. All those in favor? We can do, yeah, we can do a roll call.
For Oxnard Authority, BNA Lopez. For-
Yes.
Okay, Councilmember Bert Perello.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gabe Tehran
Yes.
and Public Member Barb Filkins.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
All right, now for the motion, or do we have a motion for the vice chair for the Oxnard Airport Authority? I think it was moved by Councilmember Perello.
And I'll second that also.
All right, roll call vote, please.
And to clarify, that's for Vice Chair Barbara Filkins?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Supervisor Vianney Lopez?
Yes.
Councilmember Bert Perello?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gabe Tehran
Yes.
and Public Member Barbara Filkins?
Yes.
Thank you. We have, that motion passes unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Gabe Tehran as Chair for 2025 and Barbara Filkins as Vice Chair for 2025 Oxnard Airport Authority.
Great, thank you. So I will finish off with the Camarillo Airport Authority, and then we'll hand over to the rest of the meeting to our new chairs. So we will go on to the selection of the chair and vice chair for the Camarillo Airport Authority, and we'll open it up for discussion from the members.
Discussion or nomination?
Nominations, discussion, comments.
I'd like to nominate Councilmember Tony Tremblay for chair.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote, please, or any other comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
For Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez?
Yes.
Councilmember Tony Tremblay? Councilmember Susan Santangelo? And Public Member Scott Bear?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously.
All right, and now for the vice chair for calendar year 2025 for the Camarillo Airport Authority. Do you have a nomination, comments, or questions? All right, I'll second. All right, if there's no other questions or comments, roll call vote, please.
Thank you. That for Camarillo Authority, Supervisor Vianney Lopez?
Yes.
Councilmember Tony Tremblay? Councilmember Susan Santangelo? And Public Member Scott Bear?
I'll serve as Robin to Mayor Tremblay's Batman, yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously for Councilmember Tony Tremblay for chair and Public Member Scott Bear for vice chair for Camarillo Airport Authority in 2025. Excuse me. And for the record, we have no public comment for this item.
Thank you for that clarification. So with that, congratulations to our 2025 chairs and vice chairs. So I will hand it over to Chair Tehran and Chair Tremblay now for the rest of the meeting.
All right, item C on the agenda is receiving the final record of the first budget.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to, what we wanted to do is kind of just give updates. As you know, we are wrapping up the two noise programs for Oxnard and Camarillo airports. Camarillo Airport specifically, we've identified a significant issue with Old Town Camarillo. 90+% of our noise comments come from that part of the community. So concurrently, we dove into hiring a consulting team, Lean, to come in and help us analyze the approaches for over Camarillo. Can we make some adjustments and do some things? So this is just a quick update from the consulting team. Paul Hannah is with us tonight to kind of give us a quick update of where we are. And we'll continue to do this over time as we progress. I think we've shared that this is a year and a half long process as we get through and do some of this analysis. Paul, thank you.
Thank you very much. Hannah, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be with you this evening. So just a couple of slides that I wanted to use as a visual aid to give everyone an update on where we are with the process. So as you heard from Keith, we are looking primarily at the arrival of aircraft into the Camarillo Airport as an opportunity for identifying noise reduction. And really, we're focused on 3 different areas to try to reduce the noise, in particular for residents of Old Town, but also wherever there's opportunities to reduce aviation noise over any residential area within Ventura County. That's an important goal as well. So the 3 areas we're focused on, as you can see there on the lower left, number 1 is looking at FAA published what we call instrument approach procedures. Those are the procedures that pilots use sometimes when the weather's not great, but they can certainly use them when the weather is fine, where the flight crew is looking basically heads down inside the cockpit. And as a result, they fly a very repeatable path coming into the airport over and over. Those procedures are very useful at nighttime. They're also very useful when the weather isn't quite as great, which also can sometimes happen to be nighttime here. So that's one area that we're looking at, are those published instrument procedures. A second aspect that we're looking at for noise reduction is FAA published visual approach procedures. You may have heard us speak about this in the past, but in case you haven't, the FAA has a tool called a charted visual flight procedure, which enables processes like this one to identify a repeatable path that can be used in the daytime, certainly when the weather is good. And the nice thing about visual procedures is that they can get a little bit closer to other aircraft. They can sometimes get a bit closer to challenging terrain situations like the mountains immediately east of Camarillo. But what's really useful about a visual procedure is if it generates a noise benefit, it can be used by every aircraft that comes into the airport. And the third aspect we're looking at is a change to a visual approach aid that's actually currently installed on the airport right now, and it's the visual approach aid that would bring aircraft in over Old Town itself. And what you can see on the graphic on the right there is just a quick kind of representation of the kinds of very near-term changes that we could go after. The red polygon that you see there is the nominal kind of normal approach that all aircraft would take when they're in that phase of the approach coming into the runway. And with very small changes, which are things that the airport and the FAA can work together to do relatively quickly, we may be able to find opportunities just to make small increases to increase the height of aircraft over Old Town in particular. So between those three tools, we are going to be exploring lots of different opportunities to reduce noise. And on the next slide, I wanted to give some updates on the progress that we're making. So as Keith mentioned, we're just starting to kind of put together the people and the processes. We and the Department of Airports believe that this should be not only a technical process with stakeholders that are important to the Camarillo Airport, but also involve as much outreach as possible to the residents of Ventura County who are experiencing these noise impacts. So one of the things that we've done right away is to prepare what we call concepts of these 3 different kinds of approach methods, these approach procedures. And those concepts are going to be reviewed with a flight procedure subcommittee. And that subcommittee is going to be composed of Camarillo Airport stakeholders. And so we're just putting that together right now. And these concepts, we're going to take the best of the concepts, the ones that look technically feasible, the ones that achieve our goals of noise reduction. And then eventually those will be put forward to the public to review, including additional information about where the aircraft will go, how high they will be, and what kind of noise people might be experiencing today and what they might experience in the future. Those concepts, one thing we just wanted to share with everyone is that obviously our team had some ideas we want to explore with our subcommittee first and foremost that's coming up. So we had 4 concepts ourselves. 2 concepts came from the Department of Airports already, just great ideas from the brilliant minds that are there overseeing Camarillo Airport. And we also had 4 suggestions that came following our first opportunity to talk about this project back in October at the end of the Part 150 process. And one of the cool things about this is our team loves those kinds of public comments because they come from residents who are experiencing the noise. And in many cases, we can convert those concepts. So again, our goals with these things, and I'll show an example in just a moment of what that looks like. But Our goal with these procedures is noise reduction, and first and foremost, we want to avoid residential areas wherever possible, and that means laterally trying to find better, safe paths for the aircraft to just avoid overflying residential areas like Old Town. We've got many of the concepts I just mentioned may achieve that goal. The second thing is where we can't avoid it, and where we're maybe very close into the airport, looking for those altitude increases. But really also making sure that we identify opportunities to reduce noise 24/7, 365. We know the noise complaints aren't just in the day and they're in the nighttime. So back one second, if we could go to the next slide. What you see on the left was just one of the 4 kind of unique concepts that we received from a resident of Ventura County. It's a flight track of an actual business jet arrival that came into the Camarillo airport at some point in 2024. That aircraft was not necessarily flying on a published arrival procedure into the airport or a published approach procedure. It just happened to be a track that did a pretty good job of avoiding overflight of some of the residential areas, not all of them. And one of the things that our team is doing right now is we're taking those kinds of suggestions, those examples that residents would like us to explore, and we're turning them into actual instrument procedures that we can then review with our subcommittee, which is again comprised of those Camarillo Airport stakeholders, like people who operate aircraft on the airport, residents of Old Town, and then see if they will achieve our goals. So on the right, that is a viable, potentially, and like technically viable approach procedure that it takes a very similar track and actually in the graphic on the right avoids most of Old Town. So you'll be seeing and hearing a lot more about these kinds of concepts as we continue to work with the Camarillo Airport stakeholders via the subcommittee. And that's the last slide that I wanted to, if we could just advance one more. That's the last thing we wanted to brief folks on here tonight is we have identified participants for that flight procedure subcommittee so we can work to obtain the best local knowledge about how these procedures could be used to achieve our goals. Once we've had some opportunities to review those concepts and gain that knowledge from our local airport stakeholders, we will be publishing those procedures online for all residents of Ventura County to review, and we will be engaging in more public meetings to get feedback on what residents think, if they will or won't make the situation better. And then once we have that feedback about the best possible information, those will be the procedures we take forward for the FAA to continue to work on. And right now, we are hoping that the initial concepts that we could start to share with the public would be available by the 3rd quarter of this year. Obviously, at that point, we would then work with the FAA to start enacting those changes. So that's the update we had to share with you all tonight, but I'm more than happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hanna. An excellent presentation. Before I ask if there are any public comments, are there any questions from members of the authority for Mr. Hanna? All right. I'll reserve comments for later. Are there any public comments on this item?
No, we do not have any public comments, but I do want to add just a reminder to everyone to please speak close into the microphone. We're getting some feedback that we can't hear all the authority members. But other than that, no, we do not have any public comment.
Okay, that's great. Commentary from members of the authority. Mr. Barrett.
Mr. Hanna, I just wanted to highlight something that you touched on, because I think it's real important that you're taking input from members of the public and you value that input and you will try to craft it into something that might be a viable approach. I know the Department of Airports has really made an effort to reach out to the public on this issue and be very transparent with the public on this issue. So to hear you say that you're taking the public's input and trying to craft it into something workable is very commendable. I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you.
Just a request, Mr. Hanna, and that is looking at, first of all, thank you for all the good work. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out of the Flight Procedures Subcommittee process. One request that I would have is that you come back to the authority at the beginning of the 2nd quarter of this year, April, and give us a status report on how the process is going along, because I anticipate then if we've got public review occurring in quarter 3, it'd be nice to know in about 90 days, 120 days, right in that time frame where things are going. And hopefully that's feasible for Department of Airports, Mr. Freitas.
I can tell you that multiple report outs are already planned and in their schedule, part of what was in their scope of work.
And the second thing I would ask for is that there be public messaging of this airspace and procedure update to the extent that it has not already occurred, that there be public messaging to, particularly to all of those folks in Old Town that have signed up for updates from the department, so that they're aware of Mr. Hannah's work and the work of the flight procedures subcommittee. I have a feeling that's probably already occurring, but
Paul did touch on it. One of the community members from Old Town is on that subcommittee specifically for that purpose. Outside of that, we've also reached out to the fairly large Old Town group and said, hey, we'd also like to just brief you when you're ready for us. And Jeanette from our office is already working on setting that up.
that'd be great, because I'm thinking about a little bit more macro messaging in that sense. And then I would also ask that you, and certainly Councilmember Santangelo and I can inform the city of what's going on, but just making sure that the city, that the city is aware of what's going on.
If there's an opportunity, I do have regular meetings with the city manager. If there's an opportunity to come out to the city and be a part of one of your city council members, we're happy to do that as well.
That'd be great.
Yep.
Thank you. We'll really appreciate all of your work, Mr. Hannah. Thank you very, very much. Any other comments at all, Mr. Barry?
Just to pick up on the messaging, perhaps Mr. Hannah's slide deck can either be distributed by Jeanette or at least made available on the website so that people who didn't see the presentation tonight can go back and look at it.
And piggybacking on what Mr. Bear had to say, hopefully that slide deck can be sent to members of the authority as well, so that we have that at our disposal. You may already be intending to do it anyway, but.
Recordings of these meetings are on our YouTube page, so we can link to that too.
Oh, that'll be fine. Sure. And plus just send the slide deck to us, as well, email us the slide deck to it as well. So, all right. With that, thank you very much for your presentation. Thanks for all your work. It's really appreciated.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the time tonight, and I'm glad everybody made it here safely in the midst of all the fires going on. So really appreciate it.
Hang in there. All right, that's the receive and file item. So for the record, we'll note that that's been received and filed. Okay, so we don't have county council here, so I don't quite how to do this from a procedural standpoint, but this is now Camarillo and Oxnard Airport Authority. So you could either have Mr. Tehran and myself both ask at the same time for this update, or return, or yeah. Could we just do could Mr. Tehran and I just do a concurrent request for this next item, for the presentation of this next item? Thank you.
Refer to you.
It's been requested. You're up.
All right. Good evening to you all. I'm Jeanette Haregi, Communications and Engagement Manager and Public Information Officer for the Department of Airports. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present our 12th feature in our series of stories that put a spotlight on local aviation. These stories highlight the many unknowns of the airport, the behind-the-scenes work made possible by the day-to-day operations of Camarillo Airport and Oxnard Airport, work that makes a profound impact on the communities we serve. Tonight's story focuses on the Career Education Center's aviation program offered through the Ventura County Office of Education. When Robin Sullivan earned her pilot's license in 2010, she knew her future in aviation wouldn't be exclusively in the sky. Having had a relatively negative experience with her own ground school training, Sullivan had developed a desire to ensure future students had a more positive experience. With the completion of certifications in flight instruction and FAA ground school instruction for instrument and advanced training, Sullivan was a perfect fit when the Ventura County Office of Education approached the Ventura County 99s with an ask. They needed someone to take over the Career Education Center's aviation program. Fully certified and motivated to teach, Sullivan, an active member of the 99s, was on board. That was 6 years ago. Offering 1 year of aviation education to local high school students starting at 16 years old, the Career Education Center has been able to take the program to new heights thanks to Sullivan. With an annual cohort of 14, give or take a few, students can enroll in the Introduction to Aviation program via registration through their academic counselor, and grades from the course are recorded as part of their high school transcripts. The course is twofold, Sullivan says, providing ground school training for a remote pilot's license and a private pilot's license. To become a pilot, you have to pass a knowledge test, a flying test, and an oral exam with a flight examiner, Sullivan said. All students complete this course ready to complete the knowledge test. The center's aviation classroom was originally set up by the United States Navy, but under Sullivan's direction, the program now follows the same curriculum offered through the FAA and AOPA, the Aviation Owners and Pilots Association. Students are bused into the Camarillo Airport campus from high schools throughout Ventura County twice a week for courses that run 4 hours each. We work on flight planning, building model airplanes, mock knowledge tests, and things that are just for fun, Sullivan says. Most importantly for the students, Sullivan is qualified to endorse them to take the knowledge test upon completion of the course, a requirement for the knowledge test and something that the program wasn't able to offer prior to Sullivan's tenure. As it stands, the course provides access to the next generation of aviation professionals in a way few other youth-based programs can. These students come into the course with a drive for aviation, Sullivan said. Having the ability to offer this kind of course locally to fulfill that drive and allow them to hit the ground running is invaluable. The Introduction to Aviation course is one of 15 offered through the Ventura County Office of Education's Career Education Center. For more information, visit vcoe.org and select programs and services. Thank you.
I'm looking at Mr. Tyrone. You want me to go ahead and, oh, sorry. Thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah. Before we call and see whether or not there are any public comments, do any members of either authority have any questions? Mr. Perello.
Yes, it mentions in your staff report, and I appreciate it, fantastic situation here. But it mentions the Ventura County Office of Education, career, and with high schools. Are there any requirements high school student has to meet, or is it simply being endorsed, or is it simply cost?
For this program, for the aviation class, they have to be 16 years old. But other than that, as long as there's an interest, and then they go through their high school counselor and they have to get, approval to register. But
So 16 years old, high school counselor approves it. The person could be approved by the counselor and they're in, or is there a selection process is it unlimited seating for this thing?
I don't believe it's unlimited seating. I don't know all of those details. I don't know if Barb can speak to that, if she knows anything about,
Okay, because I do think that there's got to be a lot of kids that have never had an opportunity to even get in an airplane or near an airplane that would be interested. And I hope it's being shared with those schools that those children may attend. Thank you. That's it.
Yeah, I know that the Office of Education does promote all of their courses that are available, the 15 courses that are available. And then they also have a separate program for adult education as well. So I don't know if Barb wants to speak to that at all.
There we go. And I do believe that the courses for aviation have been offered to adults as well. To the age, Bert, I think it goes with the ability of when you can take the knowledge test by FAA regulation. So that's probably what drives there. But I can say that the program is very valuable. I've known several students who've gone through it. Robin does a great job. I think to your point and to everybody else is getting the word out and maybe getting enough capabilities, resources to, if we could, expand the program.
Mr. Trent.
Thank you. And I can speak just in general terms to Councilmember Perello or Member Perello's question there. I had worked for the County Office of Education for about 14 years, and we did a number of collaborative efforts with the Career Education Center, which is an amazing program, formerly known as ROP, or Regional Occupational Programming. And the different types of programming that are offered there, as you mentioned, Ms. Haregi, are promoted and are open to all students regardless of ability to pay. And if they have an interest in it and it fits within their academic studies or in their coursework or their trajectory, they can take that for high school credit, typically elective credit. And it really comes down to the structure of how the class is promoted and the rosters fulfilled. Sometimes it's first come, first serve. Sometimes it is you need to demonstrate that you're meeting such criteria, such as the minimum GPA or some prerequisites. To this particular course, I can't say if those are what those prerequisites might be, if any. But I can say that it's highly likely that any student who shows an interest and takes the necessary steps to join that, going through their counseling office or through an administrator, they can find a way to land in that program, given the availability of spots. So that's just, again, in general terms. But a lot of great programs there at the Career Education Center, much needed resource and often untapped, some of those courses. So thank you.
And also to Councilmember Perlo's question, I think there's a collective effort, you know, whether it's a career education center, the EAA, with the Explorers, with the Young Eagles program, there's a collective effort to make the aviation industry as a whole more accessible to youth, especially youth that might not otherwise have access, you know, to aviation. So the Department of Airports is absolutely on board with making sure that we help support those programs, especially those that are at Camarillo and Oxnard Airport.
I'd just like to add to that because I've talked a little bit with Jeanette. The opportunities, not just through the EAA, but also the Commemorative Air Force in terms of scholarship and I shouldn't say subsidizing, helping some of these students that want to go on to a career either in STEM or in aviation is probably something that we should bring forward to the community in the next year.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jeanette, are there any public comments with respect to this item?
We have no public comment on this item.
All right, hearing no public comments with respect to this. Any other comments from members of either authority? I just want to give two kudos. One to Ms. Sullivan and the folks who are running this program. It's hard to give enough positives on how important this is and how necessary this is. I really appreciate her efforts and the efforts of everyone in this program. And the secondly is a kudo to you, Jeanette, because you provide us with, at every meeting, you are telling our airport's stories, and it's really important. And you always manage to find the really good topics to talk about and the really interesting ones to talk about. So I wanted to say personally, thank you so much for all of your efforts.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. That's a receive and file item for the record. It's been received and filed. And Mr. Teran, since I sort of hogged the subject on item D, do you want to take care of item E?
Happy to do so. Thank you, Chair Tremblay.
We're probably violating all kinds of procedures here, and County Council will be upset with us, but I don't know.
I think I've taken it a lot worse. So
Yeah, I have too.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item E, subject receive and file a staff report regarding airport funding basics.
So thank you,
turn it over.
chairs. Congratulations on your new assignments. And in keeping with the uplifting and exciting things happening in aviation, let's talk about money. So I have a quick and hopefully semi-entertaining macro view of finance. This is a presentation. This is an encore presentation that was requested by the Aviation Advisory Commission and presented last night. So we're going to give you a quick review of what financing looks like for airports. So some basic airport funding basics. So just as a review, our two airports are a system, and the Oxnard and Camarillo airports operate as a system. We share finances in an enterprise fund, and so that's the way we're going to view these topics. The aviation system for the national level is the National Airport System, the Aviation Trust Fund, and that system is supported by all of its users. We do have some things that are expected of us as system airports on a national basis. We do have some things that we get in return, some very good and valuable items that we should celebrate, and then a couple of final takeaways for us. So first of all, we have our two airports in the system, and Ventura County also has a comprehensive transportation system that we are a key part of. We have the California system that's managed by Caltrans, and then we have the National Plan of Integrated Airport Systems. That's the big view, and I highlighted that in red because we wanted to dive into that just a little bit. So as a general thing, all of the revenues that are available to us to operate this airport, to match the grants and what have you, come from the airport users, the aviation users. They're using this airport, they're buying gas, they're paying rent, what have you. So that money comes to us, but we don't go to the general fund. We don't go to the Ventura County supervisors and say, please give us money so that we may operate our airport. That money comes to us through our operations. We run a surplus in our enterprise fund, and so that's all good news. The revenues that come to us for major capital projects, capital infrastructure projects, come through the Airport Improvement Program, and that's funded through the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, and that is authorized and appropriated by acts of Congress, and that happens periodically. And we're in the beginning of a new 5-year phase of that right now. So just a little bit about the Airport and Airway Trust Fund. You see on the map there are nearly 3,300 different airports that are all in that system. All of them receive funding through the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, including our 2 airports. And we serve vital roles in that system, as do all of the airports. Some of them handle passenger traffic, but only 15% of that total has passenger traffic, airline traffic, et cetera. The other 85%, including our 2 airports, do not. But we are vital nonetheless, and we're all supported by that system. This is just a glimpse at the different ways that money flows into the trust fund. So we have a variety of different kinds of excise taxes on passengers and on fuel. I highlighted in green the things that may actually originate here at this airport and Oxnard Airport, which would be taxes on jet fuel and on avgas purchases. And so some of that money is collected here. Much of it, in fact, most of it is not collected here. But as I mentioned, it's one big fund, funds the entire aviation system nationwide. So the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, based on those items that I just had on the screen before, in 2022 generated $11.4 billion. Of that, 71.4 came from airline passenger activity, and the remaining 28.7 came from fuel and other kinds of operation of the system. But all of that money flowed into that. Is that enough? Well, the FAA has a budget that's quite a bit larger than it had been prior to 2018, and particularly prior to COVID years. That's when we saw some more congressional activity from the general fund and from other kinds of stimulus packages that came in. So you can see on the columns, the bars moving to the left, prior years. The trust fund was the most of the spending. There was a little bit of kick in from general fund, but that's at the discretion of Congress. The idea is that the bulk of the infrastructure is handled by the trust fund. Other kinds of items, which could include modernization, other kinds of items that Congress wants to put a name to and pass with other legislation, comes in, and that's reflected in the red bars. On the 3 on the far right, there's gray bars in there that, if you can see, those are our stimulus packages, and that really jumped up the amount of money available to FAA for infrastructure and also to additional modernization investment. So the total budget now is $24.8 billion, and the Aviation Trust Fund accounts for a smaller share of what it had been in the past. But we see that the bulk of the infrastructure needs are met by the trust fund. So again, that's the users funding the system. So when we receive grants, we're receiving that as a way to fund the entire system that we play a vital role in, and that's the good news, that we get to share in that. But we do have some responsibilities as well. They make us, and we want to put safety first. So that's always at the top of the list. So we meet all of the regulations and standards that apply to this airport. and it costs money to do so. And so they help us. They put in quite a lot of the money needed to do that. We also have rules about open access. We need to remain open and available to all aeronautical users. We'll hear about skydiving, so that's an aeronautical use, and there are very limited exceptions to that rule. We don't discriminate or create exclusive rights or uses. We're self-sustaining as much as we can, so we set rates accordingly. We coordinate closely with FAA about what needs there are at the airports to meet the standards, and work with them to get matching to match grants that are offered, and they can be as low as 5%. Or sometimes, like in COVID, there was nothing. We didn't have to pay any matching funds at all. And then we take reasonable measures to protect the airspace around the airports and preserve compatibility. And so that's when we're working with the cities and the county and other jurisdictions to make sure that we are looking at land use patterns, where residential goes, where other noise sensitive uses go. And we do that and be taking that responsibility very seriously that comes to us through the grant assurances that come with the money that is provided to us. So the good news, what do we get in return? We get emergency response bases at both Camarillo Airport and Oxnard Airport at a fraction of the cost that it would have taken to build them from scratch. And they're maintained at just a fraction of the true cost. We have the opportunity to provide a place for medical evacuation and do things like organ transplants. They come in sometimes late at night, sometimes over Old Town. And we look at that and go, yep, that was a medical helicopter that was bringing a heart to somebody who badly needs it. Those stories happen more than you think. Access to the national airspace system, that's fairly generic, but it's very important. Aeronautical business opportunities, R&D, airspace for testing. We just heard about STEM opportunities. These are happening here. Business Park offers us ability to meet our funding needs as well. Recreation, world-class air shows, Mr. Thomas, and Waypoint Cafe. Who doesn't love a shake at the Waypoint Cafe? So those are all the good news items. Just to recap, we don't take any general fund appropriations to meet our financial needs at the airports. And we serve vital roles in various systems, particularly the National Airspace System. All 3,300 airports in that system are supported by the trust fund. We've taken nearly $40 million in recent years to assist with our needs here. That's all positive. That money gets spent around the area and supports this facility, this great facility, both. And the benefits to the citizens at large are substantial and broad-based. And as a bonus point, millions of dollars annually for local schools and public services come through based on the activity here, the economic stimulus, and even just the various taxes that accrue to the ownership of aircraft and facilities here. So one last little bit that was just to put a smile on your face. This is coming sooner than you think. It's on its way. So be watching for things that come in that category. So with that, I humbly step aside, and any tough questions go to Keith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Napey. And looking at this final slide, we already do have robots that clean our homes for us, at least vacuum, right?
Absolutely.
So we are certainly almost there.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any questions from members of the authority before we go to public comments? Yes, Chair Tremblay.
Thank you, Chair Turan. I was just thinking though about I don't think our Rumba vacuum cleaner works as well as perhaps the Jetsons air taxi works. A very specific question on this. With respect to the Airport and Airway Trust Fund, the Airport Improvement Program grants, and then the legislation flowing from that, both the BIL as well as IRA, and then the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2024, which means things are authorized, but the funds aren't necessarily appropriate. I'm now going to ask you a very unfair question. So look into your crystal ball. What changes if any, do you see or foresee coming from Congress and from the new administration as to that, as particularly with respect to the Airport and Airway Trust Fund? And notice that I underscored the question with, do you see any changes, if any? Are you hearing of anything through the grapevine which might be changing in that respect?
Well, I do know that we're operating on a 5-year reauthorization. So that point is stated. Appropriations, as you mentioned, do come on an annual basis. So do you want to crystal ball that?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to that, I think specifically with the change of administration, is both parties have been very supportive of infrastructure, particularly the airports, for the last 10+ years. And so we do not, and our associations do not foresee any significant changes for airport infrastructure support at this point.
Okay, that's good news. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. And Councilmember Perillo, did you have questions?
You have 3 questions. Possibly, Councilmember Santangelo can help me on this. You mentioned heart coming in. Do we do heart transplants in the local area? I know that we do harvesting, but I don't know about transplants. The second one is with the land use. The Teal Club issue is coming up, and I'm sure there's going to be more possibly stuff that's going to force you guys to get more involved, take a position, or make a presentation at a council meeting. I don't see how.
Happy to do that.
Okay. The $40 million, and I appreciate that you made your slides. The individuals in my city that want to shut down the airport to try to get them to understand the replacement of the money that's been put there, we'd have to pay it back. They seem to think that they can just snap their fingers and out of thin air, we can get the money, shut down the airport and everything will be okay. They don't get it, but wanted to share that.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Perillo. Additional questions from any authority members? Seeing and hearing none, do we have public comments on this item?
We have no public comment on this item.
Okay, thank you very much. And before we do conclude this item, as a follow-up based on that and the point Councilmember Perillo made, I wonder if in the future for this fiscal year, maybe the last point there around the economic outcomes from the presence of the airports, if that's something we can quantify to have talked about for each of the airports for Camarillo and Oxnard.
I can say that it is on our plan to update. We had done almost, I think, a decade or so ago, an economic impact for both airports, and it is on our schedule to update both of those.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Okay, and Chair Tremblay, would you like to take the next item?
I don't know, you're doing such a good job, you could bring us home, so that's fine. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Chair, you're on a roll.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on now to our next section here for item 7, Director's Report. And Mr. Prater.
Thank you, Chair. I have just a few items I wanted to share. As I was preparing this, I was reminded that, we had completed in November the Franklin fire. Camarillo Airport had become an air base to support that. And following that was the fire in Malibu. And I'm sorry to say, but happy to say with this resource that for the 3rd time in 60 days, Camarillo Airport is a fire air attack base for CAL FIRE in the state to help assist with what's happening originally in LA County. And now we've had a little spark up here in Ventura County. So for the 3rd time, we've got 20+ helicopters on the ground as of today, with another 20 coming in the next few days for a total of 40. So probably between Oxnard Airport and Camarillo Airport, 40 fire attack helicopters in the area to support the fire. Just wanted to kind of share that. Which is the reason that authority member who is also the chair of the Board of Supervisors, Kelly Long, is not here tonight so that she can be a part of the command post for that. So talking about, I did have on a list, which we had public comment on the air show. We've got a lot of interest in parking from the Port of Hueneme, which is good revenue for us. And part of the requirement for grant assurance is that we monetize as best we can our properties here at our two airports. So it's a requirement that we have, which obviously, and we will be in discussions, ongoing discussions with our partners with the air show to try to figure that out as we progress. You know, it's hard to say, as mentioned, what the demand is as we get closer to August in the air show, but we'll be working through that with them. Happy to report through Congresswoman Brownlee's office and their support, we secured a $1.8 million grant to do the design work that we've been talking about, the replacement for the pavements here at Camarillo Airport. We talked about the 40 million that we've accumulated and completed at Oxnard Airport to redo that airport. Now we've got to do the same here at Camarillo, and that's in the neighborhood of 85 million to do all of the pavements here. Probably work over the next 10 years, but the first part of it is design, and that's what this first grant is. Wanted to share Erin Powers with the Department of Airports has hit her 15-year mark with the county, and we recognized her just recently for that great work, who handles all the grants and projects for us, has done a fabulous job over the years. I wanted to recognize our operations and maintenance folks. Every year, Caltrans inspector comes out, looks at each of the airports. This last month, for the second year in a row, Oxnard Airport had a complete clean bill of health, no issues, no deficiencies noted. And that goes, I want to recognize operations and maintenance for all their great work. Inspections and corrections and all the things they do. Just wanted to share that we have a new partner owner in the Cloud 9 and Channel Islands properties. Again, no changes to what they do, but a company called Sky Harbor, a publicly traded corporation, has bought in the partners for Channel Islands and Cloud 9. Again, no changes to their tenants and the business that they do, all things, leases, all those things, nothing's changed. We've got a few calls. I do want to recognize the airport staff, the soil stockpile that we had at the Oxnard Airport, December 18th, I think was the last day. We had to, as we've talked many times, for the regional water board with the state, because we had a construction project, we normally would just offload that excess soil. They required that we stockpile it, which was concerning for our neighbors, but we put plastic liners below, covered them, had to test them. So we had some traces in some of the soil, and some of it was completely no traces of the PFAS chemical. And I want to be clear that, again, it's parts per trillion, and I was educated what that means. So if the ground here to the sun, we've gone 12 inches. That's the perspective of what parts per trillion are and what we're dealing with. So very minute. Very few companies in the state actually can do this testing. But we did all of the testing. We identified where those parcels that had some of that PFAS in it. Those that had no traces went to Chiquita landfill, and those that had traces of the PFAS, we had to truck all the way to Buttonwillow off Highway 5 to dispose of that. At the tune of about $900,000 to make that transport. But to be clear, there is none of that soil is remaining. We've had concerns about dust and other things. We have watered that just to keep, it's a 11 acres site of dirt that remains. So sometimes we have to watch and re-water that, and we'll continue to watch that. But none of the soil is remaining at that site. I want to make that clear. Last two items. Skydiving, we talked about it at the last meeting. We're slated for January, February. We will get the notice out. We've already spoken with FSDO, Flight Standards District Office folks, which is FAA. They're going to actually come out and observe them doing their trial and test runs. Again, January, February, and we'll do the notifications to our stakeholders so that they're aware of seeing people jump out of an airplane, which they haven't seen before, to educate our community so that there's minimize those concerns. On a side note, we have the Golden Knights, the expert branch that you see at various places doing the Army's version of skydiving. They want to come out to Oxnard Airport out of the blue, not related to this first project we're working on. They're doing it around the country just to do demonstrations. They're trying to get elected officials to jump with them. I know that VNA is wanted to be first in line to do that. So there'll be a big fight for that, but
I think the new chairs should, you know.
But so that's coming. We're working with that, and we will obviously communicate if that happens in the next several months. And the last item I want to talk about, which is in the packet, there is a letter to a company because they brought their Boeing business jet to Camarillo Airport, and they should not have done so. So in the packet, you see a very nice, not so nice letter to the company. Dave Nafee was the first on scene to contact and track down the pilots on site and remind them that they do not have authorization to be here. They were very cordial about that and immediately relocated the airplane off-site, not to be returned ever again. But wanted to highlight that we took immediate action. That happened. And it also forced us to look back. How did this happen? There is for pilots, a thing called a supplement. It's a green book that we have now made changes in that. And that's what most pilots look at when they're not familiar with an airport, to say no airplanes over 115,000 pounds per the Joint Powers Agreement. So another place to reinforce that issue in that item. So that's what I have very quickly.
Thank you very much, Mr. Freitas. Any quick items on that? Yes, Mr. Bear.
I was listening to your discussion about the Boeing business jet, and they weren't authorized to come in. And, you know, over the years, as I listened to ATIS recordings, often they have, no matter what the weather is, they have a notice to airmen or some sort of advisory on the ATIS about any given subject.
Yes.
Why not put an advisory on our ATIS recordings? Pilots are reminded that jets over 115,000 pounds are not authorized at Camarillo Airport.
It is a potential, and that's part of what Paul and team will do. We've done some of that most recently about some of our approaches and after hours. So we've kind of expanded that. There are limitations to all the messages, because if you think about it, it's about the immediate safety, usually closures of taxiways or runways. So if you make this big, long, we've got, 3 minutes of stuff, not to say that we can't, but those are things we will consider as we go through that process.
Just not to beat a dead horse, but I will a little bit. I would think that reminding pilots that overweight aircraft aren't allowed at our airport would be considered a safety item.
Yes. Well, and again, let's just be clear. It is in those facility directors that a heavy plane like that should not be here already. We just have highlighted in another mechanism in that. So those weight limits are already there, and that plane shouldn't have been here for the publications that already exist. We just took another measure to make it super clear. Anyway.
Okay. Anything else, Member Bear? You're good? All right. Anyone else? Yes, Councilor Perello.
Agree with your comments. I think it's a good idea. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I agree. And I understand your response, but just as a guy sitting here on this board, I think that's a damn good idea.
Let me just be clear. By no means am I saying no.
Okay. A couple of questions. With respect to the properties that people were looking to purchase from the Airport Authority in Oxnard, and then there had been something found in the soil. Do we have any update about that?
The only update we have at this point is we have gone through our normal process through our Board of Supervisors to hire a consulting firm, and that's where we are at this point. So we're about, I would expect in the next 60 days that we have a consulting firm to assist us in evaluating what the contamination issues are and what our remediation plan would be in the next 60 days to have them under contract.
Okay. The second is, I know you gave it, the price of removing that soil off that piece of property was how much money?
I don't have the exact number, but it was in the neighborhood. We had a not to exceed number of $1 million. I think we did better than that. So in the neighborhood of $900,000. Typically, the cost to remove dirt in that quantity would be in the neighborhood of $150,000 to $200,000. But because we had to go to Buttonwillow for some of that, that's the big driver for sure.
Thank you. And I'll bring up another question similar to that under my comments, but one other question I have on respect to the monthly activity reports. We're covering that section now also, correct?
I'm open.
Okay, on Oxnard for October, under landside citations, we have 26, and in November, we have 7. What, with Camarillo having 0, what's going on at Oxnard that we have 26 landside citations?
Yeah, the bulk of our citations, particularly at Oxnard, have to do with, we have a public parking lot and a terminal that has rental cars. So a lot of people just show up and want to just leave their car for a long extended period of time. We don't have that same opportunity here at Camarillo. So that's the bulk of the citations, are just folks parking illegally at the Oxnard terminal, around the Oxnard terminal.
That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you for the information.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Perillo. Anyone else? Okay, before we move on, I just have a couple quick things. Thank you for the reports regarding the stockpiled soil that was removed from the Ventura Road site. I just want to thank yourself and your team for the not just the work and having it done and keeping folks updated throughout this process, but also your transparency in what was going to happen and when, and informing folks on that, as well as being open to receiving calls and emails and connecting directly with folks who had concerns. And in addition to that, when it was all said and done, sharing the testing reports on the soil with the public so that they can review that themselves and be assured that this is what the outcome was, this is what it meant, and now the soil's been removed and disposed of properly in a place where it's meant to go. And thank you for your
and before you move
yes, sir.
on,
Go ahead.
I want to recognize first Supervisor Lopez, who had the idea, who said, staff, be sure you talk with council member Turan, because he does great social media. And thank you for working with Jeanette in our office and doing a whole video on that and sharing that, allowing us to share it, you putting it out on your channels. That was fabulous. That helped. And candidly, I think we got 2 calls about it, and most of it was just dust issues, which you would expect. But that was pretty much it about the operation. Nobody was surprised. There was no questions. It was an ancillary dust issue that had come up.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yes, no, I
Both.
appreciate the opportunity. And it was actually, as I mentioned before, when I do updates or information about the airport, it's just very surprising to me just how many people get engaged in that. So that goes a long way for you all as well, that your outreach does land with folks. And so I thank you all for being willing to do that as a government entity and an enterprise fund as well. But the last thing I'll say about the stockpiles is your visual or your analogy about the distance to the sun. I think it's about 92 million miles. If we're talking 12 inches and then 92 million miles, just so folks understand the scale of what we're talking about here when you look at parts per trillion.
Yes.
If I had 12 inches of dirt in this room, that's a lot. But if we're talking 12 inches to the sun, yes. I'm glad that you were able to give that for folks. And last thing here is thank you for the update on the skydiving. I imagine we'll get subsequent updates as testing and implementation goes through those phases. I think last time there was questions around the potential for distracted driving with that. So I appreciate that we're already looking forward or toward informing the public and those near there to be aware that this will be happening. And if there's any silver lining to that, maybe we'll get folks to look up from their phones long enough to see the folks skydiving out of the sky, right? So
as they're driving, yes.
Yes. So at least their eyes are looking the correct direction, at least closer to the road. So okay, those are my questions or my comments. So thank you again, Mr. Freitas. And for this next item, I will turn it over to Chair Tremblay to chair this item. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair Tron. Let's see. We have a listing of of reports under item 8 and correspondence under item 9. Those are all receive and file unless there's anything from members of the authority. We can dispense with those. Authority comments, item 10. Do any members of either authority wish to make some comments?
Go, you get your hand. Mr. Trump.
Great. Thank you. Well, I just wanted to again thank the Department of Airport staff for all of the work they've put into what's going on at Oxnard Airport, and especially with the stockpiled dirt. And I understand Councilor Perello mentioned he had a couple questions, for this portion. But I also wanted to recognize something that Mr. Napi had brought up at the end of his slide there with the Jetsons. And after that, that item had concluded, something that occurred to me that I think is important for the public to have just for perspective. It may seem wild to think, well, autonomous aircraft or fully electric aircraft, and that's science fiction. That's not going to happen in my lifetime. I would like to point out, and I regularly do, that it was only 25 years ago that if you said every single person that you run into is going to have not only a phone alongside with them, that they'll be accessible and economically accessible for everybody. But not only that, you would have the entire encyclopedia at your fingertips, or be able to talk to people at no cost in other countries through internet-based calling. And people say, oh, no, absolutely not. That's wild. And well, or even that children would have cell phones all the time. I just like to point that out for folks, let alone autonomous cars, electric vehicles, even infrastructure where people, if we built something and say, well, where's all the payphones? Why didn't you put payphones in there? And when you go and you see relics of the past, as far as technology goes, technology grows at leaps and bounds. And so who knows, in 20 years, what we'll be saying and looking back and say, remember when we thought it was wild that we thought that there wouldn't be autonomous aircraft in our time? So I just wanted to point that out.
I'll point out on that line that the military has been doing autonomous aircraft for about 2 decades. So yeah, they don't see it and touch it on a daily basis, but it's been happening for a long time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was just a point I wanted to make. So thank you very much.
I will bite my tongue a little bit on the autonomous aircraft. Sorry, Keith. But I do want to make a comment about Oxnard and CAU and just bring it to the attention that we do have an educational facility on the field, which happened to have been selected as the 25th top online school by Newsweek this year. And they beat out Stanford and MIT among those. So, I mean, I know it's online, and I know there's an undergraduate online, which a lot of the students at CAU at Oxnard participate in, and there's also a master's program. But I thought it was just worth bringing up that we have a.
And to tie that together, not only is CAU with us, but they are also the entity that we are negotiating currently for the former Golden West FBO site to be a long-term based tenant at Oxnard Airport with us.
So I just wanted to bring up the fact that the educational potential of Oxnard is pretty strong.
Just to kind of like share a couple of points. The reason I asked about the soil from the property that the airport had that there was looking to purchase and then they found something. There is an issue going on in Oxnard currently with respect to the old ABEX, which is now the Mexican consulate, when the solvents that were put in the ground. And now there are complaints from the neighborhood of mitigation of the Environmental Protection Agency and 2 neighborhoods adjacent to the airport. What also was happening is because of the high water table, the water is coming out of the ground on Teal Club Road adjacent to the airport. I have no idea if there's a connection or if something is aware, but I don't want the residents that have gotten very upset, even if it is 12 inches from here to the sun, when you get somebody coming in and they say their kid's got cancer, I mean, it gets a little hairy. And so I just don't want us to get tarred and feathered with something that is not something to do with the airport. Just a heads up. And as an aside, I apologize for being late. I was at something just before this called the Ventura County, and we have a supervisor here, and I'd like to take the chance, and some other council members from other community. The Ventura County Council of Governments, we had some DA presentation, and there's been an issue with respect to the rape kits, sexual violence rape kits that are untested in the county. We got an answer tonight, 2,846 rape kits still untested. We have tested 415 and we've gotten 43 positive hits with the DNA. So the elected officials here maybe want to let somebody know that this is something that's at least, I hope, a priority with the elected officials. 2,800 rape kits still untested over a period of time is not acceptable. My opinion. That's all my comments.
Any other comments? I have five. Forgive me, I will be succinct. Number one.
I thought there was a limit. Wasn't there a limit to
No, there's no.
3.5?
No, now that I've been elected as chair for the authority.
New rules.
there's
All
no limit.
right. Got
So
it.
I would like to see, I would request, and I don't know what the protocol on this, I'd like to request number one is an agenda item for our next meeting. A discussion and action item relative to having alternates sit on the dais with us and receive any necessary legal input from county council, not policy, but legal input with respect to that. And any changes that, if any, that would need to be made to bylaws to accomplish that. So that's item number one. And do I need support, Mr. Freitas, from members of the authority to put something on an agenda?
I support that.
You do not, as chair, you have full reign to set the agenda.
Good, I'll exercise that then. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Perello. I appreciate that. Number two, I would like to have an agenda item, a report on the progress and a discussion as an agenda item on the parking issues relative to Wings Over Camarillo Air Show and have a presentation on that and what the current status of the discussions are. I'm not asking for an appointment of a formal subcommittee at this point. Just like to have a discussion, although I would like the agenda item to include the potential for approval or establishment of an ad hoc committee if the authority believes that to be an appropriate step. So just sort of a placeholder. Number three, I don't know if Jeanette is still here or not, but again, kudos to Jeanette for, can't see her in the back. Kudos to Jeanette for all of her stories. Just a couple of ideas. I thought the organ transplant idea was outstanding. I'm sure that it's in the can, so to speak, but there probably is a short video of the importance of this airport to the firefighting efforts, mountain fire, all the fires that have been going on in the last several days. If there isn't already, that would be something excellent to put together, both as a story and then as presentation to city councils as well. Both are certainly our city council. And I want to piggyback on Mr. Perello's excellent suggestion that perhaps at the next time you come to the Camarillo City Council, you could consider doing a short item on airport funding basics, as well as the importance of the airport for firefighting efforts. And then finally, with respect to the Golden Knights, I realize that Supervisor Lopez is in position number one, having volunteered to jump out of the plane with a Golden Knight. I would respectfully request that I be number two behind Supervisor Lopez. It's certainly consistent with many people in my community who suggest that I jump out of a plane on a daily basis, but I would really enjoy that. So if
This
they're
time
looking
with
for
a
volunteers,
parachute.
but of course I'm behind Supervisor Lopez because she was first in line for that one. Any other comment? Councilmember Perello.
I'd go for number three.
Okay. Any other comments? With that, we'll adjourn the Camarillo Airport Authority.
Thank you. And any comments from the Oxnard Airport Authority? Seeing and hearing none, I will have us go ahead and adjourn as well. We are at 7:53 p.m. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair Tremblay. Congratulations to you and Vice Chair Member Bear. So thank you.
Thank you. Right back at both of you. Gabe and Barbara. Okay, we're adjourned.